Hi folks, I'm going to unashamedly jump on the Katana bandwagon today and talk about Boss Katanas. And I don't have a Gen 3, I've got a Mark 1. If you look back in my other videos, you'll see lots and lots of things about it. I made it into a floor amp with a GAFC foot switch built in. Please go back and have a look at that. It's still the best thing I ever made. This video is about people looking at the Gen 3 if you already have a Katana. Because it's a bit of a dilemma, especially I think for Mark 1 owners like myself, because between the Mark 1 and the Gen 3 there is quite a lot of differences. There's a lot of enhancements and a lot of nice little things. And you begin to think, might be worth changing. Mark 2 is less so because you have got more parameters built into that amp. You've got the second voicings of things and you've got the concentric knobs. You've got extra, you can run more effects essentially. So you can trade in your Mark 1 100 watt combo and you'll get €100 for it. You can trade in your Mark 2 combo and you'll get 150, 180 euros for it. You might get more if you're lucky, but ballpark figure you're going to at least spend a couple of €100 getting the new version. So is it worth it? That's my dilemma. And I like buying things. I like buying new toys. But I don't like replacing like for like, if that makes sense. It has to be something very different. I bought a Windsor here, the PV Windsor. It sounds very different to the Bugera. The Bugera sounds different to the PV Ultra Plus. I have a Jet City up there, which is the Soldano Hot Rod 50. Very, very different amplifier. All second hand and cheap, €200, €300 for the head and cabinet, €250, and I bought that new, but it was still at the time only about $350. So you can get a lot of other options for your money. And for me, if I was not somebody who's starting modified the hell out of my Katana, I would look at what I've got and look at the money difference and would it be better spent elsewhere? And my consensus after watching as many videos as I can on the Gen 3, good machine, I'm going to stick with my Mark 1. I'm not going to spend for me it would be, I don't know if anybody would even buy my floor amp, it's made by me for me. But say €300 to upgrade. That's not where I would spend my money. Because I can buy a hell of a lot more kit with that money to bring my Mark 1 or Mark 2 up to something comparable or with more options than the Gen 3. Now, if you're new to the world of guitar and you're, say, wanting your first gigging sized amp, by all means, yeah. If you want a brand new amp, the Gen 3 100 watt, I would say go for the 100 because you get the effects loop and you also get the use of the GAFC foot switch. That makes a world of difference. I would also tend to say go for the head because then it gives you where I'm going with this video. Cabinets. Cabinets make the Boss Katana. Nothing wrong with the 1x12 combo. Nothing wrong with the 2x12. Nothing wrong with the artist, it's got a lovely speaker. But cabinets give you huge voicing options for very little money. You can pick up a 4x12 cabinet for €100, £100, $100. Once I picked up two Marshall, they weren't expensive Marshall cabinets, they were I think of the MG series, but £100 at the time for a pair of them. Old Laney cabinets, 50, 60, 70 pounds. Like say this PV was €300 for the head and the cabinet. Now, the cabinets give you such variety of voicings that for a couple of €100 you could probably have a couple of cabinets. And that might just hit the spot for what you're looking at. Now, I'm going to go through a few little tricks as well, because the new Gen 3 has got some goodies. And you will have read and heard all about these extra features. Now, people are out to sell you things, and I can see why. You know, they've made improvements, they've made more options, they want to show you the new options. There's no point really showing you the same things that the old ones do, because you can get them either used or you might already have one. So there's no need. So where am I going with this? Right, I like an external boost pedal. It's not that I'm not fond of the Katana's own boosts, but in the Mark 1 you've got limited spacings. So by using an external boost and an external wah pedal, it frees up that bank. My booster mod button is now mod. I've got this set for a phaser. But no matter which channel I'm on, I have a Boss SD1 at my feet, and that's my boost for all my channels. Now you can have a whole array of them. You know, you can pick up a little clone a little golden horse. What are they? About €20? So, good grief, you could have 10 little boosts. You could have 5 boosts, 5 different cheap delays. You could have a phaser, flanger, whatever. Or you can go down the other route, and down here there is a Boss. It's a Line 6 M13. The M13 has a plethora of effects. I've got a video on that. You can run it 4 cable method into your Katana, and you can have foot switches galore. I can have 4 different effects on at once. Go to the video. It's too much to even explain. €130 for the whole lot, and it's also got a tuner in it, it's got a looper in it, it's got a noise gate in it. So even just for those 3 things, it's a bargain. But €130 for countless delays. You can have pages and pages of delays. It's essentially like having, good grief, hundreds of effects units. And they are just effects. They're not modelling like amp modelers or anything, it's just effects. So there's another option. So if you wanted to spend €200-300 upgrading your kit, you could have a monster setup. But I want to just quickly show you a thing on the pushed channel that you get in the Gen 3, because it's something that is almost lacking in all the others, but there's a great way of doing it, and it's the way we've always done it in the past. I don't run a clean channel. I'm not a fan of the clean channel. Or a clean tone. The clean channel is good. It's a great pedal platform, but I don't use a clean tone. If I want a clean tone, I will use my crunch channel. Now, my crunch channel, this is Kramer Pacer with Seymour Duncan JB and Jazz. So pretty standard, but fairly high output pickups. Now, in the crunch mode, the gain is roughly about halfway up, and I have this sound. So I'll switch the delay off. There we go. So you can see roughly where that sound is going. Yeah, it's there. It's the Australian band full of Scottish people. So yeah, that is what I would use as my clean tone. And it's not clean. But if you just roll your volume pot down. Now I'm on the neck pickup. Now that that has got a little bit of compression and a little bit of sustain. But that's what we would always have classed as a kind of pushed clean. There's barely a hair of gain in that. And I'm on the humbucker mode, so if you've got a Strat, you've got even more control. In fact, I'll Stratish it. Coil split this. But it's got a warmth, and the push channel of a Gen 3 is that kind of, not even edge of breakup, it's just everything's warm. It's rounding off the edges of that, it's clipping it very slightly. But it gives a sustain and a bit of control. And if I want to go back to a higher crunchy tone without touching a thing, I go back to the bridge pickup. Back to the neck. Add a bit of chorus to that. Bit of delay to that. But it's not clean. This is just what I would class as pushed. So don't stress about buying a Gen 3 for the push channel. You can do it easily with the crunch channel. You can also do a beautiful version on the clean channel with using the Blues Driver overdrive setting in the Katana, and just set the gain very low, and it just gives that note a bit of a bloom, and that works fantastic. Now, what I did was quite recently I sat and painstakingly dialed in my high gain tone on the Katana with this PV Windsor. That is essentially a Marshall JCM 800. Little bit more gain on it, but the voicing is incredibly close. I've got a video in that as well. I'm going to keep saying I've got a video in that because I do. Now, that amplifier into that cabinet, into the PV's own cabinet, is a beautiful match. However, when I dialed in my tone, I put both of these into the Harley Benton. It's a stereo cab and I A-B'd them. And it meant I didn't have time for my ears to forget what the tone was. It was just click, 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 click. Strum a chord, it needs this, it needs that. And if you go into your Katana in a Mark 1 or Mark 2, first thing is, everybody says, oh, it's a little bit fizzy, it's got a little bit too much top end. And I will agree out the box it does. Go into parametric EQ and you'll find on my version it was on page 2, but there is the low cut and high cut. It's essential to get the high cut down to about 5 kilohertz and the low cut to about 85 hertz. And it makes the Katana much more amp-like, much more like a tube amp, valve amp. It has this, it just rounds off the tone and it warms it up a bit. And a bit of me wonders if that's what has happened with the Gen 3. If at the factory they've went, well, we don't need it up at 10 kilohertz. We'll bring it down to 5 or 6. So out the box, it seems to sound richer, it seems to sound warmer. But to my ears it does sound like they've just shifted the EQ a bit and they've just chopped off a little bit of that really top end fizzle that the Mark 1 and the Mark 2s had. But it's a simple fix. You've got graphic EQs, parametric EQs and global EQs. You can EQ a Katana to this cows come home, or the sun comes home, or the cows go down. Anyway, pick your metaphor. There's a lot of them. A lot of EQs, not a lot of metaphors. Okay, so what I did though, I dialed these in with this cabinet. But this cabinet with the vintage 30s isn't a great cabinet for the Marshall JCM 800 tone. It's a very mid-focused amp, so going into a very mid-focused speaker, it gets a little bit abrasive and a little bit harsh. But I wasn't interested in that. All I was doing was A-Bing it. So the theory goes, if I match the Katana to the Windsor using the same cabinet, no matter which cabinet I plug it into, the characteristics of the amplifiers will match. And it has worked beautifully. Now, the Katana now, what you hear, is running into the PV Windsor cabinet, which is a little bit warmer, a little bit less mid-pushed, more Celestian Greenback-like. And it suits the Marshall-esque tone. To my ears, you may disagree, but I want to let you hear where you spend your money. Part 2. Spend your money on a couple of speaker cabinets and some options, because used cabinets you really won't lose money on. You buy them for €100. If you don't like it, you can sell it for €100. So there's no big deal. So I will go back to my high gain Marshall-y tone, which for the JCM 800 I needed the brown channel, the gain around 1 o'clock, and the bass is set fairly high, and the bass on the parametric EQ is set quite high. I think it's up at number 8 or 9 on the parametric EQ. It's about 2 o'clock on the Katana, and the middle is at 1 o'clock, and the treble is at 1, and the presence is at 1. So that's enough to give it that kind of mid-range Marshall cut, and that's what you want. You don't want it muddy with a Marshall. It's got to slice through the mix. So in the room it can sound a bit abrasive and a bit harsh, but in a band context it works really well. So into the PV's own cabinet, if I go, there we go. I've got no boosts on, and I did compare this using a Boss SD1 as well. And the Katana reacts to the Boss SD1 just as well as the Windsor, just as well as the real deal. So that's another great match. So here we have the PV cabinet. Now, nothing else matters here, it's just the cabinet. Not a tight modern metal sound, it's quite a vintage 80s kind of. It's not tight at all, but that works really well in a band mix for me. You know, look at the style. it's hardly modern metal. You can dial it in to do that, but for me, that cabinet with the Katana matches that PV with that cabinet really well. So I can have a live rig that I know I don't have valves going to go wrong. It's a great backup if I want to use this. I have my effects built in. I've got a line out. Everything in one box for 9 kilos. Sit on the floor. Go. Great. Now I'll let you hear it with the Boss SD1 as well. And no boost. So subtle, but it tightens it up. It takes away a bit of that low end, because a JCM 800 is quite known for having quite a loose low end, and it blooms. So the SD1 does what it does with the real deal. It tightens that up, and you get chorus onto that, you'll guess exactly where that's going. Chorus on. And you've almost got that kind of 90s extreme tone. So don't despair. The Mark 1 sound great. The Mark 2 sounds great. But you've got to spend some time with them. Right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly switch over to the sound I love. To the same sound, I'm not going to touch a single control. I'll put the boost off and I'll plug it into the Harley Benton. And you will see exactly what I mean. Why your choice of speaker could be where to spend your money. Because here we have the sound I like. I've dialed it in to match that cabinet. I'll make it simple. I'll take all effects off, all delays off. And I'll switch cabinets. You didn't see me do that without switching it off. So you'll hear that's a bit grittier, a bit grainier. It still sounds good, but it loses that JCM 800 character almost. It loses that 80s feel that I wanted. So the cabinet makes the sound. Literally makes the sound. But it gives you the tone you want. So quick change. A little bit quieter as well, but point of this whole thing, don't despair. There's nothing wrong with the Mark 1, there's nothing wrong with the Mark 2. If you're looking at buying your first amp and you're thinking, oh, I can't afford the new one, don't worry. The Mark 1 and Mark 2 are brilliant amplifiers and they will stand up live, they'll stand up at home. They're great. Don't panic. Don't buy into all the marketing. It's a great amp. If you need one, go for a Gen 3. If you don't like buying used, go for the Gen 3. Great. If you can't afford one, don't panic. Don't go into debt trying to buy one. If you can find a Mark 1 for 100 quid, get it. If you can find a Mark 2 for 150 quid, get it. You know, back in the day, we couldn't even buy a PV Bandit for that, which was 2 channels and that's it. This brings me on to my final point, because I'm already overrunning in this video. People often spout the Katana as like a beginner amp or an entry-level amp. Now, price-wise, it is entry-level for a lot of things. You get your budget little practice thing. And then your first gigging amp is in that price range. But I would say that for a beginner, the Katana is not a beginner's amp in the sense that it's got so much in the way of parameters and effects and combinations of doing things Do you voice things with a boost? Do you voice it with the EQ? Do you voice it with a different cabinet? Do you do this? Do you do that? A simple 2-channel amp gives you a couple of sounds, and for a beginner that's great. There's your sound, that's fine, off you go. The Katana has got some amazing sounds, but it has got so many rabbit holes that you could end up down the wrong one for what you're looking for. So be wary, use your ears, and please take your time with them. They do way more than these. This is simple. This is, ignore the fact that it's a tube amp and it's 120 watts. Anybody can plug into there and within a minute have a great tone. With the Katana, it takes a little bit more time. So spend the time. Spend the time with your Mark 1. Go give it a bit of love. Give it a bit of attention. Try it in some different speakers. And you will find that it will still stack up against anything. The line outs may not quite be as good, but you can always shove a microphone in front of a speaker. Still sounds good. You're not going to spend 200 euros upgrading to get a better line out option when you can get a decent microphone for 25 euros and shove it in front of it. That would do the job. Now, I'm off in a few days to go and work with a big rock band called Avantasia. I'm their guitar tech. But some of the gear that's used isn't super high end and super fancy. It's who plays it. Take your time and you'll enjoy any Katana. Thank you very much. It's been a really long video. I hope it's given you a little bit of faith in what you've got. I hope it's given you a little bit of faith in what you're looking at if you're buying used. Don't be put down. They're good. And I still absolutely love the Boss Katana. I'll shove the phaser on and play you something out kind of Van Halen-y, Robert Baker style.